I will do all of the things later, just since we've been short on time here. Okay, we are on.
Okay, so thank you guys so much for coming.
Mute
I'll
me
mute
here.
me here.
I guess I'll start. My name is Lorena Kichik. Um, love to dance ever since I was little. I think I was just born to dance and entertain. I was always entertaining and a professional dancer. I've been really blessed to work with some great artists and travel the world, which is amazing because I got to see a lot of things, learn a lot of new things. So yeah, my passion was and it still is dance, dance, dance. I'm also into fitness. Um, I've got to, I guess we're talking a little bit about ourselves as a dancer. I trained ballet, jazz, hip hop, Latin, ballroom, salsa. And I just, as a dancer, growing up, I always, there's always those myths of like what not to eat or just eat an apple, as a dancer. So for me, there's a lot of not taboo, but like food and dance. Sometimes you just don't see it as you need food for fuel. You know what I mean? A little bit more about myself, I guess. I don't know what you guys want to know. I guess professional dancer, dance with some great artists like Shakira and Pitbull and Far East Movement. And yeah, I guess that's a little bit of me all in a one ball. I'll throw it to Janelle so she can introduce herself.
Okay, cool. I was just trying to invite more people. So if you'd like to invite more people, that's awesome. Just so they know that we're here, especially the dancers that we're friends on Clubhouse with. So I was just doing my little thing. So about me, I'm originally from Guam. I moved out here to LA late, right? It was after college. I did the thing back home. I came here. I started in San Diego and I was on a dance scholarship there with APA, which is Academy of Performing Arts. And we did like everything from acting to singing to all the things. I was very lucky enough to have really good teachers. And then the transition from San Diego to LA happened sometime after my brother, who's also a dancer, had graduated from school, and we're like 7 years apart, but you would never tell because we grew up dancing, So everyone was like, "Oh, Janelle and TJ." So we came out here to LA and started just auditioning and having an agent and doing the things. And it was very hard for me to juggle like my working life, right? To sustain a living, right? I was an ESL teacher, so I actually was using my BA, which was in English. So I was actually doing that, after I had basically got done with Starbucks, because the transition happened from Starbucks to the ESL thing. And yeah, so doing that and having a dance career and auditioning was really tough. And I had to really balance a lot of things. Like there was one time I took a whole group of English students to a rehearsal downtown. I had them get on a bus with me to go to my rehearsal that I needed to be at. And I figured it out. I got them on, I got them and I'm like, oh, it's a field trip to, Japantown or whatever, so it was approved and it was fine. And I just figured things out as I was going. And I'm sure my food was, my intake of nutrition was not there. I was like on coffee, I was on fumes, I was definitely either carbing up because I knew I had to like have a long day, or I just forgot to eat and I would just scarf something down real quick. So that's my my experience with nutrition, I didn't plan out my food. No, I just was like, let me see what I feel like eating. I'm an emotional person. I'm very empathic. So I eat by what I feel like eating for the most part. I know Lorena's like nodding her head right now. She's like, yes, that's why we're friends. So yeah, so you eat how you feel, right? Sometimes, and you just like maybe eat the whole bag of chips and maybe you weren't supposed to, or you just didn't realize and you're like, oh, wow, I ate all of that, or ice cream, a lot of dancers eat ice cream as a really big reward, and that's good. That's a good thing, but maybe not the whole tub. But yeah, so that's my experience coming out here and being a dancer. I danced for Disney, like I was telling Emily, and I did not plan out my foods. I was always just kind of rushing to the Disney store to get some food and come back and, figure that out. Even though they did have healthy options, it was still kind of tough to navigate, right? Like, well, what am I going to eat now? So I'm going to turn it over to Emily.
Yeah. So Emily Velasquez, I'm a registered dietitian nutritionist. My dance background, like I was just mentioning a few minutes ago, so I have a ballet. I did ballet hardcore training, moved senior year of high school, and so what got me into nutrition in the first place was basically feeling like my body and therefore like what I ate was standing in the way between me and my dreams. Again, very healthy foundation. So I don't know how I got so focused on it I was aware of it from a pretty young age because I was kind of like a bigger kid in my classes, which looking back on it, I was not a huge kid. I was just bigger than like all the skinny kids, but then like I was in like middle school and I lost weight and I got positive feedback from people, and then that was just kind of the start to creating rules. And I was always like, oh, I'm doing this in a healthy way, and kind of learning like the right way, which like now I know is for those of you who've never heard of it, there's something called orthorexia, which is like basically an obsession with the right way or like the clean way of eating. And there were just so many rules and so many right things, and I thought I was so hard on myself, and it was all about like being as lean as possible, as small as possible, and that's like the main thing. Not like, honestly, like, so I did serious training. I didn't get into where I wanted to get training in college. I was a late bloomer. I transitioned into a modern, I transferred schools and I went to a modern dance program, ended up getting a second degree in dance as I got my nutrition degree, which wasn't originally planned. It was like a dance minor. I got to do a ton of performing there and some after school too. But I did definitely like go into nutrition more with that behind that in the back of my mind, not really understanding or fully accepting that there was definitely talent. Like I didn't have what I thought I needed in that way. And then there was also just a ton of cross training. Like it was like I've always been a pretty bad turner, like not innately with the best balance, but like between myself and my teachers, it was just do more turns, just do more balances rather than learning like the right things to do, like exercises to increase balance and increase training capabilities and all the other like functional aspects of that. So anyway, so that's how I got into nutrition. Since then, I did research with dancers for both degrees, like capstones on both. And one of the main focuses of that research was comparing how much dancers think that they need energy wise, so total calorie intake, versus how much they actually do. And of course, there was a gap, and they thought that they needed less than they did. And so ever since college, my whole plan was to like work with dancers more. And I just kind of got on the more, my main career path. Most recently, I worked at Nike for 5 years, and I'm about to actually start now working in eating disorder clinics. In terms of like my main day job, but on the side, my main focus is dancers, as you know. And because of COVID, I just had a lot more time to focus on it. So I have been ever since then kind of speaking here and there at like studios or college dance departments. And so now I've just been able to focus a lot more on it and help dancers however I can. So that's me in a nutshell. Hopefully that wasn't too long. Cool. Should I go into my nutrition
That was
stuff
that
now? I
was
didn't know
really
if you guys
good.
wanted to chat anymore before that.
No, that was good to share. Sorry, we're all like, that was really good to share, because you're not only just talking as a nutritionist, you have been a dancer, you have that background that people can relate to, and you know the pressures that dancers go through, yeah, in an early age, like how you had it. We all had it. So yeah, if you want to straight go to your talks, I won't keep you from anything else.
Yeah, I mean, obviously informal, so guys like interrupt whatever, but there was a few things in our time I wanted to focus on and point on, some little nuggets that are some of like the most kind of foundational concepts for dancers. But first I want to set the stage some with kind of the why and what this looks like. So I talked some about like, you know, and we all kind of talking about fueling and what it looked like when we were younger. But like imagine for, you know, for dancers listening, or imagine being a dancer and you're training so hard and you're pushing yourself and you are using like your trainers, your physical therapists, your dance coach, you're like putting into it as much as you can, and you hit a plateau or you get an injury and you can't get past the plateau, you can't get past the injury, that is usually an indicator that nutrition is not where it needs to be. And I'm not saying that you need to eat more apple slices or you need to eat more carrots or more salads, because what dancers naturally think of, or even just people in general, is, oh, I need to eat healthy, I need to eat more color, and I need, like great things. But that is not what's really going, that's a small piece of it, but that's not like level one, because it's because dancers need so much gas in their tank to not run, like break down at the side of the road, basically, right? So like my first point was that dancers are athletes, so they need to think of themselves as athletes, and they need to fuel themselves as athletes to avoid the injury energy and to have the focus and to have the enjoyment of dance. The reason there's this, just the mere amount of how much you eat in dancing, and it's not even just felt all the time. Like you might not have injuries, you might not tank out or hit the wall, but it affects so many things. It affects your ability to pick up choreography. Like if you're having a hard time with that, might be a little bit of lack of fuel to your brain, sometimes with your mood, sometimes with hormone stuff. There's a lot of different ways that it starts impacting you as a person, and you know, you are a whole person that's dancing, so like you can't compartmentalize that. And so it's not like just this something extra, it's something that is needed, just the mere amount of food that's needed to be able to promote enjoying what you like to do and doing well at it. Then the thing that leads into, so you're looking at like overall calories are a unit of energy, so overall energy intake. And then the other thing is kind of like the quality of the intake, right? Like, you know, you guys are talking about too, like eating on the go, or like whether it's your classically really healthy stuff or whether it's your, you know, crappy stuff. But there's like some like middle ground, like the what, right? And so with dancers, as well as as well as athletes in general, the foundation needs to be carbohydrates. And that is so tricky because the world and diet culture is telling us that it's bad, that it's unhelpful, and that we need to avoid it. Dancers need to avoid, the only thing dancers need to avoid is restriction, like avoiding things, because restriction, it means that you're not going to have as much available to you. So carbs. And when I say carbs, I mean bread. Bread is great. Pasta is great. Fruit, awesome. And there are some carbs, like, so then it's like, oh, well, maybe it's like high quality carbs and some nice whole grains, but sugar's bad. Sugars has to be bad. And everybody is a little bit different. But for a lot of people, some of the more refined carbohydrates, like white bread or white pasta, or maybe, you know, there are things with sugar in them, whether it's like sports drinks, which are designed for sport, or even like one kind of fun snack that I recommend too is like fruit snacks. If you like fruit snacks, especially ones, the organic ones are really, really nice. They're just really yummy, and they have a nice type of sugar blend. It's kind of complicated, but they actually can be helpful, because if sometimes a really whole food and whole carbohydrate eating pattern, it actually can then make it harder to get to the energy, because it's like more complex to break down, or it can maybe just not be tolerated or feel as good. So there actually are times as a dancer that those foods that diet culture deems as bad are actually helpful. So there's this like relearning process. So, but yes, whole grains, rice, and like brown rice and quinoa and whole grain like versions of things are great. But even in general, like, it is definitely not, you know, the end of the world to have, you know, whatever cereal or crackers, or, you know, applesauce packets work really nicely. And sometimes those other products too, or like, you know, things like Nutri-Grain bars or Nature Valley bars that are kind of getting a worse rap lately, because like, oh, there's so much sugar in them, but they might actually help with dancers getting their calorie and carbohydrate needs. And it can be a little bit personalized. But so the second one was carbs. The third thing, and I kind of mentioned it already, but that minimal restriction is best, because all, like, the more variety, the better, because every food has a little bit of a different nutrient profile. So, you know, there are other macronutrients that are helpful to the dancer. Protein's still helpful. Fat is still helpful. All the different fruits and vegetables are helpful. And even, you know, as long, like, if you're eating animal products, all different animal products have different nutrient profiles, and they have different amounts of certain like nutrients. There's vitamins and minerals in animal products too. And so having this really diverse eating pattern helps you get just a diverse amount of different nutrients. And then when you avoid restriction and work in those foods that are like emotionally satisfying to you, then you might not have to eat the whole bag of chips, because you already had some and you can enjoy them, right? Because it's just part of who you are. That don't come down to mindfulness too in that piece, and that's much easier said than done. But yeah, so working everything in really is best, both on a performance level and for a sustainable happiness, like quality of life level. There needs to be everything, nothing, as little possible excluded, unless there's like a clinical reason for it. And then the last point I would say is kind of starting to get into level 2, because if you're one to struggle with rules and struggle with a little bit of a rigid eating plan, I would say to not focus on it, just saying that ahead of time, because it does get into a little bit more of specifics, and that is timing. And the super bare bones of timing with dance is carbs before, carbs and protein afterwards, water throughout. Like, that's kind of the most basic form. Lots of nuances when you start to getting into your hydration status and the type of sweat and the quantity of sweat that you have. You'll want to get into like electrolytes, and sometimes that can just be salts, like being aware of how salty your overall eating pattern is, because if you just tend to eat a little bit more salt, athletes, including dancers, tend to need higher salt recommendations, so you don't have to worry about like salty foods as much and kind of those risks, as opposed to the general population. But yeah, carbs before, so carbs are foundation all the time, but with protein, the main thing is that like you probably won't feel as good with protein before, along with fat, just because it tends to slow down digestion, which first of all can make you not feel as good, and it could also make like not get into your system as quickly, into your bloodstream, because it's still sitting down there digesting. Same with like if you drink water too close to when you're dancing, it's going to be sloshing, right? It's not helpful at that point. You're like waiting for it. And also, fun fact, when you're exercising, dancing at a high intensity, your blood is busy. It's busy in your body going to the muscles, so it's going away from your digestive system. And that's also part of why like that personalization comes into piece, because it magnifies those kind of GI issues because you're not having blood flow there. So things might slow down or not be working as well. So those are the main things. Oh, one more thing. Part of the timing is that there is this during piece that is missed, because you're like, I'm not gonna like be eating during dancing, but like breaks and separations between rehearsals and class, that's the time for snacks. Or if you're in a place that allows something besides water, sports drinks are really helpful, or diluted fruit juice, because you're getting some carbohydrate, but you're not like, it's not like straight juice or straight sugar, which would like be, it's too strong basically. Unless you had a lot of water with it, it would be too much. But having those easy carbohydrates through, or like sports gels or fruit snacks or applesauce, and then just drinking some water with it, can really help, because your body can only provide so much before and then during from your stores. So overall fuel, carbs, avoid restriction or minimal restriction, and timing, and carbs before and after, protein after, water. Those are my 4 main points.
Nice.
What do you guys think?
You know, it
Awesome.
is something. It seems like it's easier than when you say it and you kind of put it that way. You're kind of thinking, okay, I need when you were in dance rehearsal, you just need to plan it out, get your little snacks, and make sure you have enough for the rest of the day, for the whole day, not wait, because sometimes you're in rehearsal and you don't eat until you're done, and that's really bad. So we're gonna talk a little bit more. Hi, everybody who came in. If anybody's new, we are gonna have questions after this we're gonna have some Q&A. So stay on if you have questions for Emily. Okay, and then Janelle.
Hey, okay. I know we had some questions between Lorena and I, so that we came up with or earlier. So I think for me, because I had a neck injury in November, right? And I had put on weight since then, obviously, because I wasn't doing as much. Like, so now I've healed and everything. I'm starting to eat better, but during that period, should I have been eating a specific diet, for injuries? I was doing that cherry bundi drink. It's like a cherry juice. I don't know, because it was, for inflammation, things like that. I don't know. I was definitely eating whatever, because I, was in it, because I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. I was contemplating surgery, and, I just, one day I was like, I'm going to heal myself, and that's it. That's the answer. And then I was determined to do everything that I could to get off my nerve meds, which I was on for like a couple months, which is pretty long, right? And I noticed it was affecting my brain, and I was telling Lorena, I was like, I think I'm just really foggy, and like I need to get off these meds. And so I did my best to just wean off of it. Like I was taking 6 of those pills like a day, and then I started to go down to 4, to 2, to 0, and thank God I did. But was there a special diet I should have been eating? And also, I do have an autoimmune disorder. I have Graves' disease. So having those 2 things as a dancer, I'm not sure how helpful that is. But what should I have been eating?
Yeah, great questions. I will say in terms of your autoimmune disease, like that is definitely like something it is clinical, and it's definitely an outlier. So I'm not going to focus on that as much right now, just because of the clinical nature. But for the injuries happen all the time. The thing is that you need less to, like, energy wise, because you're not dancing as much, but that doesn't mean you don't need anything. So it's easy to get hard on yourself when you're injured and feeling like you don't deserve eating either, more like treat type stuff, or, as much, and being like almost like trying to overcompensate. So that can be a really hard balance. That's like definitely, it's not really a diet so much as like a lifestyle. That's like, it's an opportunity to explore mindful eating. There's this whole method called intuitive eating, if you've ever heard of it. It's a whole book by Evelyn Tripoli and Elise Rush. And I'm like, I would say I'm not like certified or anything, but I'm informed. And it's basically like, whenever you have an injury, you have this like free time, including like honestly COVID right now for most people. Like, you have this time to dial it in and be asking yourself, like, okay, like, why am I eating this food? Like, what does this hunger look like? I'm used to, like, if you're in a good place, like fueling yourself for dance, like fueling as much as you need, it's going to feel different, because you're like, wait, this is going to, like, maybe I won't be as hungry. What is this going to be like? Because I'm not going to need as much. So it's like kind of being intentional, not restricting because you're like, oh, I need to stop, but like exploring, like tuning into that, like, what does it feel like to not need as much side of things, and recognizing when those thoughts of like the external of like the shoulds. So that's part of it, and like the how. But in terms of like the what, with injuries, especially the proportion of what you need is going to change a little bit, because protein proportionately will be much more important. You'll probably overall need about the same, if not maybe a little bit more. So protein foods, whether they're animal products like lean meats, dairy foods, or nuts and seeds, to use some plant proteins and soy foods, just because those are the building blocks for all tissues, whether it's muscle or tissue or bone. Like with anything related to bone, there's like your calcium and vitamin D side of things, for the bone healing too. And then there's some other micronutrients that, but that's a little bit more, it's almost easier because that's covered by I'm going to eat healthy and eat a salad. So there's some certain nutrients like vitamin A, vitamin C, zinc, and these are met with a lot of kind of more traditionally thought of as healthy foods, which are your, a lot of some colorful produce, for example, maybe some beans and that type of thing. That all can help when there's also inflammation, but dancers in general are going to probably like be fighting inflammation a lot anyway. So that's when you kind of make sure that part of that balance includes omega-3 inclusive foods. So fish like salmon, walnuts, flax seeds, chia seeds, those types of foods. Or if you can do fish oil supplements too. If none of those work, like if you know that none of those are part of your regular eating pattern, and help that too. Yeah, I'll stop there because this isn't supposed to be rules. These are just some guidelines. Yeah, it's a lot of balanced diet. Yeah.
So my question to you as a dancer, and what, sometimes I hear all this, that you should have this, the size of your fist should be the size of the protein,
Mm-hmm.
and then half of your hand should be the carbs. And is that true? Like, does that apply to us too as athletes and dancers? Because we are burning a lot more than normal people that just sit in an office.
Yeah. Again, the carb thing comes down to it, because you just need more carbs. The protein, I would say, yeah, it's going to be very similar, probably, especially since it's so easy to get protein, and because it's so it's such a focus on right now. Like it's so easy, like everywhere you go, it's like, oh, this is like high protein, like, and it's, which is a good thing, you know, it's satisfying. Sorry, I was trying to say satisfying and satiating at the same time. It's both of those. And it's helpful, like it's good for your blood sugar for normal people. So like it's not going to be hard to get protein. Basically, most people are probably going to be okay. You know, might, depending, this is again personalized, but you're probably okay with protein for most people. But yeah, it's the carbs again. But to get a like, okay, yes, it's great to start to turn into hunger, but I need to have a little bit more guidance, right? And I don't typically do numbers, but one helpful thing is to look at like a plate for the meals. And this is with a lot of humility, because I also realize that a lot of different cultures of food aren't this nice little easy like compartmentalized food, right? That's just very elitist as like this being and like, oh, like you should eat your rice and your chicken and your broccoli and then like have it be like that's not how so many foods are. But when you're like kind of doing a mental checklist before putting it together, there's this, the carbohydrate and sometimes the veggies too are adjusted throughout the plate. So like on a no matter what, your protein's probably going to be about a quarter of a plate's worth, which goes back to like that kind of fist size, that deck of cards size. That's going to be pretty great. Then your veggies and carbs kind of will adjust from there. So on lighter days, having a nice full half a plate of a salad is going to be great for you. On heavier days, if you still want those colors and that produce, great, but do it in the form of fruit, and get like putting more of your grains, of your starchy foods, of your potatoes, whatever it may be, onto that. So it could fill up about half of your plate is on a really intense day, and then your moderate days are somewhere in between. So kind of looking at how that proportion of your foods, might not be a plate, it might be something that's mixed together, and just visually looking at that proportion and being like, oh, is this about like half and half carbs and protein? Okay, that's more like, I might, if it's an intense day, might need to add more carbs back into there to add that proportion to it. So that's a little bit more of a concrete way to look at it, I would say.
Thank you. Yeah. I think some people didn't hear me. I think on Facebook, that's what Janelle said. I asked Emily about the protein size, you know, how like the fist size for protein and the hand, but she kind of answered it, you know, I like the whole visual of the plate, because sometimes we can visualize that better. Like, okay, if you have a plate, make it, you know, and I like what you just said about if it's a heavier day, more carbs, more protein. If it's a lighter day, then you can get your salads in and a little bit of protein. And then it, you know, it just depends how many, you know, for us now that we're, you know, I'm not touring or I'm not dancing as much, but I am teaching. I feel like I'm still burning calories, but sometimes, you know, I think Zoom, you know, teaching in Zoom, you're not teaching in person anymore. It's a different animal. And that's, you also have to look at that you're in front of a camera, you're burning the, you know, even if you're just talking the whole time, it's something different. And you still, and I think that's why today I think I underestimated how much food I gave myself, and I was a little tired. So that's why I came in a little late, but yeah.
Even on light days, oh, sorry. Oh, I was going to say, even on light days, it's really easy to underestimate what we need to, because we kind of are like, oh yeah, it was light, so I'll just eat light, but it's probably a little bit more too.
And sometimes salads, I feel like people think, oh, it's healthy, and then they put a bunch of ranch or a bunch of dressing, and that is as bad as if you just eat like good, you know, right? Is your take on maybe making a dressing will probably be better than putting in that ranch or Thousand Island or whatever?
Yeah, that's
creamy.
That's a really tricky question, I think, because there's a few different ways to look at it. Because with those heavy, creamy dressings, they're not as heart healthy, and they're providing a lot of energy from fat, which isn't as helpful for dancers. but you could still put a lot of oil on an nice natural oil and vinegar based dressing, and it would still potentially, it would be heart healthier, like, but if you're like putting tons and tons on, it still might not be as helpful and functional. The other thing to consider is like how much of that is like how much you love it, how much of it is just because that's what you do. If it's like, if you're feeling a lot of deprivation of like having, because you can have salad with ranch, I would just have it a different part of the day, like maybe at the end of the day, and be mindful about like how you're feeling, because it's still vegetables. It doesn't take away from the vegetables value. It just, again, isn't as functional. And then if you look at your total energy consumption, you're getting it from dressing when it would be just a lot more functional. But if you're like, oh, well, I don't even really like ranch dressing anyway, and like, okay, then maybe skip it or go lighter on it, or thin it out with milk or whatever. But if you like ranch dressing and that's how you like your salad, and that's, you hate salads and that's the only way you'll eat leafy greens, then I would say, do that. Do it at a time that works well for you. Oh, my computer's dying. But I'll plug it in. But the other thing too is like what you were mentioning with like this messaging of like bad and good, is that people start to get these like foods of like almost as like an obligation. Like, well, I'm going to eat a salad because it's good. And so then they get confused, because then if they eat a salad because it's good and then they have this dressing on it, and then they find out the dressing's not good, and then you need to change the dressing, and there's just like this messaging of like how it should be like good. And that's not the point. The point is how it's going to help you. Like, honestly, over the course of the day, vegetables don't need to be around necessarily right around dance. You need them on the regular because you need the antioxidants and vitamins that they give you. Do they need to be your lunch? Not necessarily. Could it be in a smoothie? Fine. And honestly, they could, depending on the person, especially if you're like not used to eating a lot of vegetables and you're like, I'm going to be healthy, so I'm going to eat a bunch of whatever, green beans. You might actually feel worse because you're not used to the type of food being in your stomach, and that'll negatively affect your dancing. So like, sorry, I'm like adding a whole bunch into that, but so salads, not as functional with ranch dressing, but can be really satisfying. So.
And just one, I know I have one more question before we open it up to other people in the clubhouse to ask questions for you, Emily.
Yeah.
My other question was, as a Latina, as a person that we have, like culturally, we have high cholesterol. I have high cholesterol in my family. I don't know all the Latinos, but it's just, I just say that because I'm like, all the food, well, maybe it just runs in the family.
Yeah.
So as an athlete, as a dancer, as a Pilates instructor, what is a good, because right now I just got my checkup and my cholesterol is not that high. Like the bad cholesterol is 114 and it's supposed to be 100, right? I think it's supposed to be between, like, it's not like that bad, but it's still 114.
If you're tracking.
So
yeah. Like how
I'm going to ask you, like, what is a good food that, because my doctor's like, well, just exercise. And I'm like, I exercise every day.
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Mm-hmm.
I dance every day. I teach. So I'm like, and eat healthy. So what are some foods for that, to get cholesterol? Like I eat oatmeal, but maybe some other things that you can tell us.
So the thing with the cholesterol issue is that you have good cholesterol and you have like bad cholesterol, which bad meaning closing down your arteries and making it harder for your blood to get through. The good ones are helping clear that out. So like that's, for those listening, watching who are new to that concept, just a little bit of a background. So this is like therapeutic foods, really. This is when it gets into like a little bit more medical stuff. Again, very personalized, but general enough, like heart health awareness is, a lot of it is preventative for anybody. And it's, honestly, the leading cause of mortality or morbidity or whatever. Very cardiovascular health is very important. So there are certain foods that eating them lead to more of that bad cholesterol. And that's, I would say in excess, I say excess, not like you can't have it for most people. So, but that is, it's called saturated fat. So it's mostly in foods that, fats that come from animals, whether it's like the cream part of dairy products, or it's kind of like that white part of meats. It also includes tropical oils, including coconut and palm oil. And it's solid at room temperature, and it can contribute to that building up over time. Then there are the foods that help clear it out. And you're looking for high fiber food specifically. It's called soluble fiber. But practically speaking, it does include oatmeal, includes like apples and pears. It includes beans, are fantastic beans, like work them in. If you're not eating beans, you want to work it in gradually, because that fiber.
I know that. Beans?
Yeah, beans. Yeah, beans. Oh, beans are so good. They can just be a little bit. When you're getting used to fiber, it can be like hard digestively, because you got to drink more water, and your body has to like the bacteria in there that's like chewing on it, like gets like a little bit excited. But anyway, so those foods help clear out. So it's a combination of the two. The other thing, though, when you're talking to your doctor too, is because, well, it's the having more of the good cholesterol is good for helping to keep things clear. Sometimes doctors just look at the bad cholesterol and they don't look at the good cholesterol, and the ratio is been found to be more important than the actual amounts. So my mom had slightly high, and the doctor wanted to put her on medication right away, and she's like, no, I want to figure it out. So she did just incorporate more, basically more fiber into her diet, and cut out a little bit on dairy. I think not even that much. And she lowered it. But not only that, is that like I did ask her to look up at those numbers, and her good cholesterol was really high. Like it was higher than mine. Like it was super high. So I'm like, I don't think that ratio was actually even as terrible as they made it sound. And she almost got put on medication when her it's called LDL to HDL ratio wasn't bad. So yeah, those are some foods.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I think we're just going to go ahead and open it up for questions. So we've got Claire, Shivani, and Sunny just came in. Thank you, Sunny, for being here. Sunny is our client. She's been with us for quite some time. So our little Pilates bar extraordinaire. So yeah, we're going to go ahead and give you guys the invite to speak if you guys want to.
Should we say goodbye on Facebook?
Yeah, we're going to say goodbye on Facebook. Goodbye, Facebook. And then, yeah, we got to go. Thank you for watching if you're on.
Thank you, guys.